Hey everyone, welcome to episode 67 of PixlFeed Radio, and I'm here with my friend Michael Killen, and we're going to talk about funnels, man. I'm so pumped about this. I told him this as soon as he came on. He actually, for those of you that don't know, he actually has a book called Five-Figure Funnels, How to Sell Marketing Funnel Services to Your Customers for 5 figures in any market, no matter your experience. He's also the founder of Sell Your Service, #1 service for selling your funnels and how to market your funnels. So this is a topic I've been dying to talk about because people who build funnels often undervalue themselves. And building a funnel is not easy. I mean, the technical part of it, depending on what software you're using, it can be like Legos where you place all the pieces together. But one thing is to build a funnel, and another thing is to make a funnel that converts and makes you money, right?
Sure. Yeah, 100%. Yeah.
So let's talk about this. Well, before we get into the whole funnel conversation, let's talk about a little bit about your background of how did you become an entrepreneur? Were you one of those kids who was selling things on the side? How did it all start?
No, I wasn't. It's funny. Like I hear that a lot, that people start as kids, and I don't think I was particularly entrepreneurial. There was a few like programs at school and stuff, where you like set up a little business and you like make calendars and stuff. But I remember from a really early age, it's pretty sad, wanting to work for large corporate marketing businesses. I was like the IBMs of the world, the Oracles of the world, Microsoft's. Like I want to work for those guys. And I ended up going down a little bit of a different path. I trained as a chef for years and years and years and worked in France. And then eventually...
in France, out of all places? That's the Mecca.
Yeah, well, and the truth is I couldn't hack it. Like, those guys are on another level.
I can only imagine.
Like, you've got to seriously want to do 100-hour weeks for 10 years to get anywhere. And I just couldn't hack the lifestyle and the stress. And so I was like, I want to get a job. I want to get a job with air conditioning. Let's go back to my my original plan. And I got a job.
I don't want to get too derailed here, but one of my first jobs as a kid was in a restaurant.
Yeah.
And it was washing dishes. And my first day was Mother's Day. That was a beating.
Yeah. That'll teach you some life lessons. Right?
Yeah. So I admire, and I bartended for a little bit when I was in college too. Yeah. So I admire anybody who's in the service industry, whether you're a waiter, waitress, bartender, chef, cook, line cook, busboy, whatever, man. I have so much respect for all those people because it's not an easy job to do. Anyway, let's get back into it.
No. I wholeheartedly agree. And kind of, it's funny, since kind of running my own business, I've almost relied more on my like chefing and restaurant experience than I had with my marketing degree. So I ended up getting a job selling door to door and paid my way kind of through university and did a marketing degree. And from that, kind of had some small marketing roles, and bit by bit, and eventually I became the digital marketing lead for a large data company, like a big tech conglomerate, for the UK and the Nordics, of all places. So I kind of split my time between the UK and Finland, and then all of a sudden, this huge company, like name brand company, had a really terrible couple of years and fired something like 10,000 members of staff.
Wow.
Yeah, like overnight. It was an absolute massacre. And
was this like in 2010?
Around then. Yeah. And I had no money at all, but what I ended up doing is I ended up going to Vegas with my brother. I was like,
God.
You know what? If I've lost my job, I'm going to lose my job in style.
Right.
So we kind of scraped the last of my money together and a little bit of his money. We went out to Vegas and stayed at the Mirage. And I was so disillusioned with the corporate lifestyle, because that's the path that is traditionally laid out in education, right? Like, get a good education, go to university, get a degree, get a good job. And then overnight it was taken away from me. And I was like, well, that kind of, what was the point of all of that? And so I remember, had a really good or rough time, depending on which memory I recall of Vegas. And I wrote down on a piece of paper, I was like, I never want to work for anyone else again. I want to do something to do with marketing, and I want to start my own business. So I was like, let's take it from there. And from there, I basically set up an agency, and it's grown from there. And in 2016, I sold my agency to my business partner, who was based in the States. And then that was around 2016. And then from then, I set up Sell Your Service, which the reason for that is because when I was running an agency, it's interesting. Earlier you said, oh, people can build funnels and stuff. And that's what I was doing. And I kind of assumed that everyone was doing that. I was like,
right,
this is the sensible thing to do to a website and to an email list. And if you can drive traffic, like back when I was doing digital marketing for corporate companies, you'd have to spend tens of thousands of dollars to get decent internet traffic. And now with Facebook, you can do like $1 a day stuff that works. And it just seemed crazy to me that not everyone was doing it. But anyway, not everyone was doing it back then, and still not now to some extent. And the number one question I was asked when I was I kind of sold that agency and left and had a few circles and networks that I was a part of, they were like, but how could you possibly sell a website or a marketing funnel that's built with plugins and tools? How could you sell that for 10 grand? And I was like, that's easy. That's the easy part. Selling it's the easy bit. So I kind of wrote out how I did it, and that turned into a webinar, and then a few webinars, and a coaching group, and then a book, and so on and so forth. So it really grew from that one question, which is, how can I actually make a decent living selling marketing funnels? And that's where we are now.
That's amazing, man. I mean, that's the biggest issue with, well, first of all, we had the little rush there, I guess, a few years ago where everybody became an agency all of a sudden, quote unquote, because of some courses that were out there.
Oh.
I have no problem with that if you know how to run ads or you know how to do the service that you're providing. But at one point, there was people selling services without knowing how to fulfill them, or they will go in a group and ask, like, I sold this. Like, what do I do now? It's like, dude, I didn't charge people money to run their ads for a good, like, at least 5 years, because I mean, just the thought, like, I don't come from an agency background. I came from my own stores. So the thought of me handling $50K out of someone's budget and spending it and not bringing in results terrified me. So I didn't do it for the longest time.
Yeah.
So a lot of people were doing that, but now I see the other side of the coin, which is I know a lot of people who know how to run traffic or how to build these funnels, but they don't know how to sell them.
Yeah.
So they have all these talent, but they don't have clients.
Yeah.
So that's when somebody like you comes in. So how did you identify the pain in the market, and what made you go after it? Like, what was that aha moment that made you realize, like, these people need help?
It was, for a start, I wasn't the best. I'm not even the best funnel builder in my own business now. Like, I worked with some really talented people, and the number one thing I saw was, and this was in other kind of groups, I was in like WordPress groups and website design groups and marketing groups. And the number one thing I saw is someone was like, how can I scale my business? How can I grow? Because I seem to do a lot of work with the customer. I charge them, and then I never seem to really make any profit. And the first thing I looked at was like, well, how much are you charging for something like this? And people are charging like $3,000 for a website, or $1,000 for a website, or like $500 for a site, and all the funnel equipment and stuff that comes with it. And I was like, you have to be able to charge minimum 5 figures if someone's going to work with you. And the initial reaction was like, that's an impossibly large sum of money for a website. And slowly, I've been trying to bring people around to this idea that it's got nothing to do with the amount of money you charge the customer. It's, as you've said, it's the amount of value that you deliver after they give you the cash. So if you know what you're doing, then it's actually learning how to charge what you're worth. That's the hard bit. And I saw so many really talented funnel builders and marketers who, like I said, were doing stuff that was way beyond what I was doing, even my own business. And they were barely scraping by. So I kind of wanted to point out like the 6 or sort of 5 or 6 areas that they could really work on. And one of the biggest ones is pricing. And then the second aspect, which a lot of people struggle with, is positioning the product and selling it and closing it, like making it a service which you say, this is what you're buying, this is how much it's going to cost, and these are the terms. Because like I'm sure you've seen a lot of the time, like customers and clients, they have like scope creep, and they say, oh, can you do this as well? And I'm seeing this, and it's like, we got to stick to the proposal, and this is how we end up getting the deal. So yeah, those became very apparent, and perhaps it were even things that I struggled with when I first started as well.
One thing that I learned very, very early on was I come from a background in sales before I got into the whole digital thing. And number one, a lot of people think with the money in their pockets, in their own pockets. You can't think like that.
Yeah.
Everybody has a different budget. So like, you got to be comfortable with throwing numbers like 20 grand, 50 grand, 100K. Like it's nothing, like it's $1 to you. Once you get that out of your head, you'll get over that fear of like, oh my God, it's too much. Number two, you got to charge for the results, not how long it takes you to achieve those results. For example, when you get on a call with me or when I manage your account, you're not paying me for the amount of time that I actually spend inside the account. You're paying for the knowledge that I've acquired over a decade, where it goes, you know what? I'm going to launch a CBO campaign with this audience, that audience, that audience, 2 creatives that say this, that do that, and let it run for 3 days. And that's going to make you 10K.
Yeah.
That's what you're paying for. You're not paying for me for to go in for the actual time it takes me to make that decision.
And sorry, man, go ahead.
No, and number 3, that this is from one of my mentors, John Logar. I've actually had him on this podcast. He taught me very early on was it takes the same amount of time to try to get somebody on the phone that's part of a large corporation or a company that has tons of money to spend, that the same little guy that you're trying to go after locally or whatever. So where do you rather spend your time to get that person on the phone and get a contact with that person? With the person who can afford millions of dollars worth of a service, or the person, the local business who's scraping to go by? I get it. When I started back in the day, I wanted to, help the local businesses, but I learned very quickly that they live and breathe every single dollar spent like it's their life, because most of them don't even know how to run a business. And those clients are going to be the biggest headaches in your life, like out of all the clients you have. I posted a meme the other day in my group where it's like, client who spent, here's a $50,000 check that you needed. Great. And then meanwhile, the one that's paying you 500 is like, well, every penny counts. Make sure you really, you know what I mean? It's very high maintenance. And I get it, but I've seen some of these small businesses, and I'm like, you have no business of being in a business of your own. You're better off working. And some of them, they will make more money if they work for somebody else, because they have this local business and they're losing money every month and they're paying themselves nothing and living like a very stressful life. Like I just don't get it. But I'm sure you've seen it too.
Yeah, and I still see it today, to be honest. And this is why one of the things we try to teach is, I had a reputation of saying everything should cost 25 grand. And the joke that would kind of go around was like, if you want to do email marketing, 25 grand, you want to do Facebook ads, 25 grand. And I was like, I don't have a problem with you charging 3 grand for your services if it's profitable, which is why it's so important for all businesses, not just agencies. I think the current agency model of do some work for the client, charge billable hours, and then kind of hope that they come back to you is fundamentally broken. It's like the architect model. That's why architects go bust all the time, because there's no repeat business. Whereas if you have scalable products, digital products, courses, trainings, programs, coaching, and begin to think outside of what you're going to deliver, there's nothing wrong with charging 3 grand. There are businesses out there who can't afford your services. That's fine. Like, there's nothing we can do about that. But that also doesn't mean that you can't serve them with a different offering. So I completely agree with you. Like, the amount of work and time and effort it takes to sell a 25K, 50K, 100K project, you might as well go after someone who's got that budget. It's as much time to sell 100 quid's worth of products to that same person, right? So we try to teach, going after a specific market, making sure that market has money. And a lot of the time, I think it boils down to people really wanting, as you mentioned earlier, to help people and help small businesses, and that kind of like, oh, they're really desperate for my help. I'm like, that might be true, but the long and short is you can't pay your mortgage if they can't kind of afford you. So yeah, there's I don't have a problem with people charging. Hell, I mean, the book is like $7, right? Because some people can't afford my 20K package, and that's fine. But I think agencies need to start moving out of just relying on one-off product and large service sales. And if anything, actually having a multitude of products at various price points helps tremendously. I mean, look what you guys are doing with the podcast, right? Like, it's essentially free information.
Oh, my whole YouTube channel.
Right?
Like, if you have a local
Exactly.
business and you watch my YouTube channel videos on Facebook ads and digital marketing,
Yeah.
you'll be golden. This is just a way for, I mean, it's my personal branding. So when big companies are looking at for somebody, they'll see my presence everywhere, and they know that I'm what I'm talking about, and makes it a little easier for me. But at the same time, it helps the small businesses,
Yep.
And I'm not gonna lie, it's a value ladder,
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
I'm not ashamed of it. There's nothing wrong with making money, but as long as you make money, help people the right way. And I get messages daily, like, thank you so much. Like, in the comments and DMs, it's like, this helped. I'm like, and I'm glad it helped you out, because, the little guy that's trying to learn this stuff, you're not my client. I mean, you're my demo for watching the YouTube videos and all that stuff. And I'm fine with that. I'm happy with that. But my demo client, it's somebody who has, $50K, $150K to spend a month on ads, just throwing numbers out there. And that's okay. No, like when people, it's like, how much does a house cost? Well, you have a house that's $100,000 and you have a house that's $20 million. Like, which one are you? But that comes with experience as well. At the beginning, I wasn't playing with these huge budgets. I was doing my own thing, and I started with small clients, and then I worked my way up with my experience. So if you're starting somewhere to build a portfolio, that's okay too. As long as you should move up, and you should know your worth as your experience grows and as you get other people results, right?
Yeah, I have a bit of a kind of controversial view on experience, because I don't think experience ties into what you can charge at all. And the only reason I say that is because I've seen people with loads of experience who don't charge enough. That's the only reason I'd say that. I'm like,
yeah, but you should be able to bring results though.
Yeah, sure.
If you learn in 6 months, I'm cool with you if you learn it in 6 months. As long as whatever you sell me brings me results. But I'm speaking more in terms of
100%.
People that don't know what they're doing, right?
Yeah, but then I know people who've been doing this 15 years who still don't know what they're doing. So
I agree, 100%.
And I think to an extent, I think there's things that you learn through getting stuff wrong and actual experience that you can't learn. You just have to get it wrong.
Yeah.
But the number one problem I think people have is most people don't realize actually how experienced they are. Most people have no concept, and they're on that kind of that Dunning-Kruger scale where they think that, well, I would only rank myself like a 7 out of 10 or a 3 out of 7 or something in terms of skill. When actually, if they really looked at it, they probably do have the experience to charge more. They probably do have the experience to start, bringing in better results. But it also brings in this bizarre kind of dichotomy of, if you want to build and deliver funnels, you might not be the best person to run your business. There's a huge difference between running a funnel agency and delivering funnel results to your customers. I never built the funnels for my customers, not when I had a team, because I knew that my job was selling, acquiring customers, managing partners in that particular area. So I thought, well, if I can charge enough money, then I can find people who are really, really good at what they do. And as long as I was charging the customers enough money to be able to hire my team and pay for my team, I was able to use their experience, use their knowledge, and make sure that we were packaging up those products. And I think a lot of people get caught between this funny sort of, seesaw of, well, I have to charge enough, but I don't think I'm experienced enough, but also I can't afford to hire anyone else to do it for me. So therefore I'm never able to scale. So there's a lot of moving pieces there, and there's some big like mindset barriers that you have to get over in order to be able to sort of seriously grow your business to the point where it's not just this feast and famine grind, because that can, that'll kill you. That'll kill you real quickly.
Yeah, and that's a good point that you brought up. If you're charging that type of money, now you're not being a freelancer. You're hiring the best of the best. I work with teams where, we all come together like the Avengers, or however you say that. Like, it's like, hey, Christian, I got this client, a buddy of mine who owns like a creative agency. It's like, why don't we put our superpowers together and work together? I'm like, yeah, let's do it. And whoever put the project together, they're getting paid whatever it is that they're getting paid, and I'm getting my usual fee. So I'm fine with that, So, and, when you're hiring the best of the best, you bring the results, and people don't care how much they pay, because if the results are there, they're happy, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, definitely, man.
So let's talk about the journey here. So, all right. So when people come up to you, they find you, to learn how to sell their services. What is the process like? What is the process like? They join the group. Is it a course? Do you walk them through it? How does that work?
So typically at the moment, most people are finding me either via search or YouTube or something like that. Our book sells like hundreds of copies a week as well, so that's a pretty good kind of entry point for people. The ultimate result is we have a weekly coaching program for about $300 a month, and that's when we really begin to dive into like, what is your particular business struggling with? Because although it's positioned as like, you need to learn how to sell marketing funnels, if it gets to a point where actually you don't struggle with sales, you don't struggle with leads, what you need to struggle with is your own internal processes and your own internal optimization. The core course, though, that's kind of like the number one thing that we pitch, which is the game plan that basically shows people how to sell a funnel from scratch, attract their first client, and sell something for around 25K. Set up those different pricing levels and pricing models that we spoke about.
So you just covering the actual, I'm assuming you're just covering the actual sales process, not the fulfillment, right?
No, we have got stuff on fulfilling it, but first of all, the industry moves so quickly that we were like, we're gonna have to release people are having to release new courses like every 3 months on new conversion processes and stuff.
That's why I haven't released a Facebook ads course, because I'm like, okay, I put all the if I put all the time into a Facebook ad, and listen, I know a lot of people who made a lot of money with Facebook ad courses, right? I've seen the numbers myself, but the issue is they last for 6 months to a year, and then it's done.
And the second you publish it, their UI will change.
Yeah, absolutely. So I was like, you know what? I'll just do the YouTube channel, and it'll get monetized at some point, and it'll give me money for the rest of my life, and I'm okay with that. Because the time that it takes to sit down and record a course, it's insane. I mean, it's not my main source of income. So
and that's why we have the coaching, because in the coaching program, I'll go over the funnels that we're building either for ourselves or for a few of our other clients. And because that's live and weekly, that gets updated way more frequently. But I think most people who are at that stage have got a pretty good idea of kind of what they want to sell. We cover a little bit. We've got a couple of bonus modules on like a few of the basic ones, like a webinar funnel and like a one-click upsell, one-time offer kind of funnel. We cover a little bit around email marketing, but mainly to be able to position like your business could just do webinar marketing. Like if as an agency, you could just offer that. You don't have to offer everything. You don't have to offer, like, if anything, I think being a full stack marketing agency is unprofitable. It's extremely hard to run. And if you've got like 20 different offerings and they change every 6 months, like it's impossible to keep up. So we are almost exclusively focused on here's how to set your price first. So we start with like, what's the amount? And that comes back. People are like, well, how much should I charge for a funnel? And I'm like, the question you need to ask is, how much do you want to earn? How much money do you want to make? Like, what's going to be profitable for you? Because for some people, they'll want a 100K business and they'll want to take 50K out of it. I'm like, great, that's 4 $25,000 projects. Like, that seems relatively easy to me. That's just one a quarter, right? Yeah. So that we set their pricing first. Then we go after a niche, make sure that they've got a really defined audience. Have a look at the assets that they build. Like, what are their processes? What are their products? How are they moving people through that process themselves? We have a look at their authority, which is like, why would I work with you over anyone else? And if you haven't got a portfolio, that can be really difficult, but there are a few kind of ways around that. And I think that work quite well, and creating content, frankly, is one of them. Then you get people's attention, which is by saying, how do you go to market? And it's funny that a lot of funnel builders struggle with that, like putting themselves out. A lot of creative people tend to struggle with that. And then there's action, which is, how do you ask for the deal? Like, how do you pitch it to the customer? How do you write the proposal? How do you close them? How do you get the money coming in? And when they go through that kind of process, that's pretty much all we do, and that's what the book covers as well. That's the kind of the process in the book.
So, so I'm assuming that you also teach the process and how to run the sales call as well.
Absolutely, yeah, 100%.
This is awesome because I'm an old school sales guy. I come from sales. So,
yeah,
so when you were crafting the whole sales pitch, who did you craft it after? Did you learn? We all know the greats like Tom Hopkins, Zig Ziglar. Those guys. Like, was it based on the old school guys' techniques? Yeah. Or like, do you throw a little bit of Dan Kennedy in there? How did you come up with the actual pitch itself?
So the pitch kind of originally was born from Oren Claff's work with Pitch Anything. We did some
that book. Yes.
Yeah, we did some training with Oren like years ago, kind of, and I was like, I don't know why this isn't a standardized practice and process. Similar to yourself, like, in order to get into marketing and go through uni, I had sales jobs. So I was, taught all kind of the old school sales methods. And from then, what we basically looked at is, I was like, well, why would people struggle to sell a funnel? Because to me, when we look at it as a marketer, you look at the process, you're like, surely this thing sells itself. Like, why wouldn't someone want this on their website? So we actually had to look at the reasons why people were struggling to sell in order to craft any kind of pitch. So we have 3 rules of selling marketing funnels, and the first rule of selling marketing funnels is don't talk about marketing funnels. Most customers and businesses still don't really understand what they are. Everyone has a completely different definition of the marketing funnel.
All they care is about results.
100%, basically, yeah. So the third thing we then say is sell futures, not features. That's rule number 3, right? Where you've got to think about your audience and the CEO who runs like a Fortune 500 company, and if you pitch to one of his like marketing directors, or even to one of his guys, or him himself, it can happen. People running big campaigns. His reasons for buying are not, I want a marketing funnel. His reasons for buying are, I need my successor coming in because I've started this business and I need to be able to sell it and position it and move it on. Compared to the mompreneur who's got a 150K a year business, she's selling her own products. You want to build funnels for her. Her problem is, I simply don't have the time to build this. So we say, like, what's the number one like kind of goal or future, the desire that they want, and we kind of build the pitch out of that, kind of working backwards.
Save time and money, man. It never fails. Save time and money.
Basically
sell results, not features. I mean, when you've been in sales for so long, and you see it everywhere. I tell people all the time, your product pages, sell the results, not the features. Sell the hole, not the drill. One of my favorite parts from Pitch Anything, it's been a while since I read it, but one of my favorite parts that I learned from it is like when he shows up at the meeting, he's talking about closing like a multi-million-dollar deal in an airport or something.
Yeah, airport, yeah.
He's like, so I showed up and then I went in there, and if they start to get technical, just change the conversation. Never get technical. Never get technical. And the other one is like, if you show up, I don't care how big the deal is, and if the decision maker is not in that room, walk away. And that's one of the biggest mistakes I see. I cannot tell you how many people I know who will take the call, even the decision makers know that, because it's like, well, I don't want to lose the deal. I'm like, no, dude, you fucking cancel that call. And if you lose it, there's someone else you can go to. Like, I have a really good friend of mine that I've been helping him out. And I yell at him all the time. Like, dude, the way I grew up selling, I learned sales like in a boiler room type of like environment. Like I had a guy who would literally take the phone away from me and like hang up on the person. That's how I learned sales. Like if I could do that to you right now, I will totally do it, but I can't jump to my computer screen. So it's all about, people don't want to hear about, the technical aspects of like Facebook ads. Like, now it's easier for me because people come to me, but before I never used to go. It's like, okay, well, I'm going to tweak this campaign this way and optimize this and optimize that. And I say, no, my pitch was basically, listen, we're going to identify our dream client over here. We're going to target these different avatars and interests, and we're going to run traffic, and we should expect to see these type of results. That was it. I mean, it was a little bit more detailed than that, but I never got into the technicals of how Facebook AI works and how to optimize this. And, people try to do all these pitch decks that are like, an hour and a half long. Like your sales call shouldn't be more than 45 minutes. 45 minutes is too long. And I'm getting into sales, but I'm sure you have this in your pitch too, is you get rid of the objections before they come up. So you should be recording your sales calls. You should be recording all your Zoom, whatever presentations, and the same objections are going to come up over and over and over again. And once you write those down and just work the answers into your pitch, and by the time you get to the end and you say, all right, let's move forward. Any questions? Guess what? There's probably not going to be any. So at that point you should be closing, right? And I'm sure you study all of that and you teach it, right?
Oh yeah. No, it's like the close, I think, is maybe like my favorite part to teach. And interestingly, out of like going through that process of set your amount, define your audience, build your assets, authority, attention, and action, I find that the number one thing that we can affect almost immediately is the proposal to close stage. Most funnel builders and agencies are generating leads. They might not be the right leads just yet. They might not be perfect clients, but they're generating leads. And when we look at their conversion between like initial discovery meeting, writing the proposal, and then actually closing, their meeting to proposal rate is pretty good. Like, we run something called laps. So we do leads, appointments, presentations, and sales for our coaching guys, and they fill those details out. And typically we find that the appointments to the proposal stage is pretty good, but their proposal to close rate tends to plummet. And there's a bunch of reasons why. So what we tend to teach is write up the proposal, and so I use a piece of software called betterproposals.io, and in that is my marketing funnel proposal template, and it's like 5 pages, if that. One of the pages is the physical like sign here and click button, right? And I say, instead of sending it over to them next time, instead of delivering it to them and kind of then sending them an email 2 days later being like, did you get the proposal? I find a lot of people kind of do that and then they never really follow up. I was like, let's get them on a call right now. Let's say we've written the proposal. We just want to run through a couple of things just to make sure that we've got it right. And then we're doing it live on Zoom, going through the proposal, just going through the sheets, just saying, and this is right. We've understood this need. We've understood this problem. They go, yeah. And I go, fantastic. We just require a signature and a deposit and we can get started today. And I'm like, if you can do that, you'll change your closing rates and your closing times from like 30 days and 10% to like 75, 80% and 15 minutes. So we tend to find that most of them are getting leads and they're writing the proposals sometimes, but it's their close rate, which is miserable. And I personally believe that once you've done the close bit, once you know how to transition someone from proposal to getting the money in your account, everything else kind of takes care of itself, because you know that, well, if I work with a customer that's then 10x that value, chances are I'm probably going to close them. So you kind of have that confidence working backwards. At least that's what we've seen with the data and the systems we're using.
Yeah, I mean, I can totally see how that system will work. Well, what is the biggest mistake that you see people making when they're trying to like close these deals?
Yeah.
They get cold feet at the end when asking for the close?
Yeah, pretty much. I think a lot of people don't know what the close should be. And I'm like, just say you need a signature and a deposit and you can get started today. Like, that's all you need to say. That's what you need to wrap up with. And I see this, and I get pitched a lot now that we run a relatively decent company. I get pitched for all kinds of services. And the number one thing I see at the end is they'll run through the presentation. It's very fancy. I go, great. And they'll go, so any questions? And I'm like, the number one question I've got is, how do I buy it? But like, just tell me what I need to do to buy, right? So the number one mistake I find at the close stage is people get cold feet. They get that horrible welling up. And I don't know if I still get that now. I just know.
I mean, I'm not in sales calls that much anymore, but you know what? I've been in sales. I come from old school sales that I've been doing it, my whole life basically. And I still get that feeling every once in a while. It's one of those things, like, I don't want to say stage fright, but it's natural. We're human beings, it just,
you're basically
brain playing games. I don't know what it is about it.
Exactly. And it's almost irrelevant. Like, I don't care if it's a 1,000,000-year-old reaction or just me. I just know that the sentence I need to say is, I just need a signature and a deposit and we can get started today. Just end with that. Just end with that.
It's just funny how your mind messes with you, because
it does.
Both there, they know you're going to ask for money. So
that's the thing.
Money for it's like, I get pitched all the time too. I know I'm going to get asked for money. It's just a matter of how much, at the end. There's nothing wrong with it, man. There's nothing wrong with it. Trust me, people know. But yeah, I still get that funny feeling. It's very rare, but it does happen to me. I will be lying if I say if it doesn't. So
I think it strikes at weird times as well. Like I used to find it with the biggest, every time I increase my prices, that's when I'd be like, oh, this time they're definitely going to say no. But I don't know what it is now. I think it's, and like I said, I don't pitch a huge amount now because we don't really do much consulting work. But even now, if I'm like publishing content, or like when I hit send on a campaign, it's like a new webinar campaign, and I'll hit send and I'm like, I know this is going to fail. I know this is going to suck. I really shouldn't click the button. It's going to be a huge disaster. But every single time you just have to push past that, trust in the systems, trust in the habits that you've built. And most of the time it ends up working out. And if it doesn't, and this is the thing as well, is I always teach my guys, like, if they say no, if you say, look, we just need a signature and a deposit, we can get started today. If they go, absolutely not, we still got some questions about the budget. Great, fantastic. That's the objection. They want clarity on the budget or the timescales or whatever it is. Awesome. Like, but if you just say, have you got any questions? In my opinion, it's leaving it a little bit weak. And I would want someone to say no, and here's why, and be forced to tell me no, and here's why, rather than sort of trying to leave it open. So yeah, it's kind of a little bit like, look, these are my cards. Here they are on the table. If you can beat that, great. I'd love to see that, but I need to know that in order to move forward with the rest of the sale.
Yeah, it's better to get the objections right there on the spot than them saying, we'll get back to you. And then they
100%.
have questions after it. I'd rather, tackle on those objections right there on the spot. So,
yeah. And it's funny, like you make a little game out of it after you've been doing it a while. You kind of like it when people, like when you put the price on the screen and the guy like goes like this. I kind of like that. I'm like, I like that you find this funny, and I think it's kind of good nature. And they go, "There's no way I'm paying that." I'm like, "You're gonna pay it."
You got to learn to have fun with it. Like
100%.
At one point, I call them objection blockers. Like I literally had a list of objection blockers that I came up with myself and friends of mine and stuff. And I mean, there was like, okay, John, this is plan A. What's plan B? And you go into like this close, and they're like, oh yeah, there is no plan B. Exactly. So what is plan B? I mean, so let's go back to plan A. This is plan A.
Yeah.
That was one. Or like, John, if I give you $1, if you give me $1, I give you $3 back. You're gonna say no? Of course not. Okay, John, if I give you if you give me $1, I give you $2 back. Are you still gonna say no? Of course not. So what is there to think about here, man?
Yeah.
But I'm ballsy like that, though. I'll talk to you straight up like that. Like a lot of friends that I know, they're super corporate, super like, I'm just me, man. This is what you get.
Yeah.
And some people don't like it. I've had deals fall through because I was too I guess you could say cocky or very like, that's just, when I know my shit. So it comes across when I talk about it, and some people don't like that. But, when I moved to the States, I was raised on the East Coast, and that's the way we are. So
yeah.
That's where the personality came from.
Yeah. No,
anyway, go ahead, Mike. What?
No, I'm just, it's, there's a lot around kind of that initial part of the process, which is the scariest. Like you say, to me, that's the part where you can have the most fun, because the customer is also probably feeling pretty nervous as well. And if you can show that, look, man, we don't have to take this super, super seriously. I'm going to try and get some money from you, but we can have, let's still be human and have an interaction. And that kind of removes the awkwardness, I find. So yeah, I'm wholly on board with that.
And listen, the best piece of advice that I can give people listening and watching this when it comes to, when, like, I'm upfront about results. Like, I have this client that I brought on like 3 weeks ago, and I said no at first. And then he came back to me and was like, all right, let me really dig into this. And it's just because I wasn't too sure about the product, and they insisted for me to work with them. And, the price was right. Everything was right. But my thing was like, man, I just don't know if I can deliver the results specifically for this type of product. And honestly, I don't want to take your money and not bring you results. That's not what I'm all about. And then we had another meeting he pushed for, and I'm glad he did, because at the end of the day, it's working. And it's just, you just got to be upfront about it, right? If you're not sure about it, then tell him, like, listen, I've never done this before with this type of X. Like, this is what I'm going to do. I'm going to try my best to do this X, and Y, and it, hopefully it'll work. But if you're upfront about something that like those rough waters that you haven't played with yet, just be upfront about it. And people just want honesty, man. If you're honest with them and you don't overpromise the world and you just be honest with them, trust me, you'll close more deals than trying to lie your way through it or whatever. Things, right?
Yeah. I think a lot what most people want, regardless of industry or product, is they want a reliable supplier who they can communicate with. Ultimately, sometimes things are going to go wrong, and hopefully I've got the skills and my team have got the skills to minimize that happening and also recover better when it does go wrong, because it will. But if you're open with people and say, look, this for whatever reason this campaign bombed, it happens. I think if you're upfront, and this kind of goes back to that small business question you said earlier, if you work with a company or a customer that's willing to pay 25 grand for a start and then, I don't know, 5K a month going forward, they're actually way more forgiving when you are still in the testing phase. I found that when people have a much smaller budget, they want to protect that money so badly that there is zero room for error. And I'm like, again, when we were running an agency, even if we ran everything at 100% right from the get-go, there's still a testing phase. Like, we still have to figure out what's going to work, right? Yeah. And some people who with a smaller budget, because they want to protect it and they're in that kind of scarcity mindset, they don't want to let any budget go to testing because they just see it as a waste. And I have found that customers with a higher budget are actually much more forgiving, is not the right term, understanding, I should say. They understand the process. They understand that this is a long-term play. We want to see results, but it could take a few weeks or even a few months to start seeing the returns that we're expecting, because it's all part of the testing phase.
Absolutely. Especially with, if you're building funnels, you got to so much testing that goes into it. Like, you got to test the headline. If the headline doesn't work, then test, I don't know, the color of the button, the placement, there's so much that goes into it. But listen, Mike, man, we're out of time. Like 45 minutes just flew by. This is crazy. Listen, thank you so much for coming on. I really appreciate it. I really enjoyed our conversation. For those of you watching or listening, make sure you go to Amazon and pick up the book. It's amazing. 5-Figure Funnels, How to Sell Marketing Funnels Services to Your Customers for 5 figures in any market, no matter your experience. It's a great book, so go pick it up. And then you can go to Sell Your Service if you want to get some coaching and go that route as well. Mike, where else can people find you?
Head to youtube.com/sell your service, all one word. And that's where my channel is. And sellyourservice.co.uk. If you go there straight away, I've got a little client attraction process for funnel builders. Man, thank you for having me on. I've loved talking sales. I don't get to talk enough sales. That's the funny thing.
I know we're talking about funnels and then I get into sales mode. Man, I miss it sometimes, because I did it for so long, but it's fun. Like, you don't get too many people who know all the old school salespeople. Actually, when I was throwing the names out there, I was thinking, pitch anything. Who wrote that? And I couldn't remember the guy's name. So I'm glad you brought it up. But
awesome.
Man, thank you so much. Anytime you want to come on, just let me know. And I'm sure we'll do this again. And for those of you watching on YouTube, subscribe to the channel, smash the like button, helps with the algo. And if you're listening to podcasts, subscribe on that platform as well. Till next time, Mike, I really appreciate it, man. Thank you so much.
Thanks for having me. Cheers, brother.